I guess sometimes you just want to make robots. So that's what I'm going to do. I designed two up in Blender, printed them out, gave them ball and socket joints, and now we're going to make a base for them. So first of all, grabbing some foam core, then giving it some height and depth by gluing some offcuts on top of it to make some steps. I kind of want one robot to be on the ground, having been defeated by the other one, and have like a big groove where it's been thrown into it. So building up around where the kind of impact crater is going to be. Then gluing the smaller one together into a prone posture. Gonna make sure that fits the right size. And we need a bit more height above it. Then assemble the arms, just so I don't have to do that later, in a fairly neutral pose. And mixing up some sculptor mold. And we're going to use this to coat the entire thing and make it all blobby. Then, while the sculptor mold's still very wet, going to push a slight indent for the fallen mecha in it. Then we're going to shape the sculptor mold and make sure it still fits. Then, while the sculptor mold is still reasonably wet, we're going to push some styrofoam shapes into it, and this is going to be some rocks and rubble around it. And just keep on making sure the mecha still fits. And then while the sculptor mold is still wet, you can blend the base of the rocks in. And after a few hours, it becomes a lot more workable and you get a nice smooth finish over it. Now, reattach the broken robot leg that fell off earlier. I have cut a lot of footage of the two robots falling apart. Then, just test fitting the leg width and the feet, and then gluing the legs into them. And using such small contact points for super glue is a lot of fun. And this is where it really pays to have kind of pre-assembled the bits that you can earlier. So the torso was entirely built separately, so I did not have to hold that at the same time. Then we're going to go in with Vallejo black primer and just brush that on all over the two mecha. And for the smaller one, we're going to go for a kind of tan colour. So with a light brown, I'm just going to go in and paint all the kind of panels and the chassis. And basically just give the entire thing a base coat into brown. For the other one, I want to have one arm to be more kind of orange, and then the rest of it's going to be green. So going with those respective colours and doing the same, just hitting all the main panels with it. I always like to have one arm or one leg a different colour with robots, where it's been replaced or salvaged, just gives it a bit more character. Then we're going to go in with metal and we're going to hit some of the details. So where the engine parts are exposed, or the vents, or the joints. And with this smaller one, you only really have to paint one side because one side is face down in the dirt. And also hitting the edges of the panels with the metallics, so it looks like the paint's been rubbed off or scratched or worn and torn. And then doing the same with the bigger mecha, just hit any of the exposed metallic areas, and if you want to, give the entire thing a silver dry brush. Then with a bronze colour, going to go in and hit some of the other details, such as the shield and the generator on the back. And this will contrast nicely with the blue we're going to use in a minute. But yeah, just picking a few key details and making them bronze instead of silver. And I gave the gun a coat of grey to make it stand out a bit more. Then, taking Arcane Blue from P3 Paints, and this is a very, very bright blue. almost say kind of aquamarine. And we're going to go in and pick out any areas where we want light or a power source to be coming through. So for example, taking the shield, painting the very center blue, and then giving a fairly heavy-handed coat to get some kind of softer light effects on the edge of the shield. And the same with the backpack, where you can just go in and fill in the interior where that light is shooting off. And then I wanted to emphasize that on the shield, so I feathered the paint out from the center. Moving back to the base and putting down a layer of black gesso beneath where the fallen mecha will be, just to stop any of the white or light blue from showing out underneath it. And then gluing the fallen mecha into position. I'm using hot glue so that if I don't like it, I can pretty easily remove it without damaging stuff later. And doing the same with the victorious mecha. Then going to mix up some basing paste. So this is a mixture of cork and fine cork basing flock, as well as PVA, a very small bit of water, and a few scoopfuls of black gesso paint. And then mix it all up together. And this will build up the turf around the base, so start smearing it everywhere using a sculpting tool, and go up to the edge of the fallen model and kind of encompass the edges of that so it looks like it's actually sunken into the dirt. And the same with the feet where it's standing on the backdrop. I also went over the sides on this just to make it look a bit more 3D, but that was a choice. And then going in with a mid-brown and just giving the entire thing a base coat once it's dry. And painting between the fallen guy's legs is a bit of a pain. So then, mixing in a good amount of white paint, we're going to make it into a kind of pale sand colour, and going to give the entire thing a dry brush on the turf. I'm mainly going to hit the top sides of this because I don't really see the point in painting the sides because they would be darker anyway. But again, that is a choice. And I wanted it to have a kind of washed out post-apocalyptic feel, which is why I'm leaning more towards the greys. And I realised I forgot to put the basing on the foot where there would be mud stuck to it, so grabbing some Vallejo ground basing paste and just smearing that on the bottom of the foot pad. Then, once all that's dry, I'm going to take some PVA and smear that where we want grass to be. And I think I went too heavy with the PVA here. I should have watered it down a bit. And maybe been a bit more patchy with how I put it on, and add a bit more to that kind of barren, radioactive look. And I also left it completely free where the mecha had been thrown into the ground, except for a little bit of grass between the legs. Then, using some 2mm winter grass, which I think looks pretty dead and irradiated, and using a static grass applicator, just going to cram that all over the PVA. And again, this was a huge pain, given that there was a model in the way of the applicator, so I couldn't really get any good positioning with it. But hey, that's a learning experience. And then finally, where there was some exposed dirt, and on the footpad, just going to go in with a very light brown again, and just give a very, very mild dry coat. And there we have it, a post-apocalyptic robot diorama. First time I tried building one of these, I think it turned out okay, but there are definitely things I would do differently next time. So, thanks for watching guys, catch you next time.